Good morning. Is that a bit loud? Thank you for being here at this first MTPC. My name is Yann Shukor. I'm from France, in Nice, and I'm going to talk to you about volume installations. I've been specialized in IT, well, ever since I knew IT existed, but professionally since '88. And I discovered MikroTik in 2011. And as usual, I wanted to pass my certifications without going through the normal track. And apparently you can't do that with MikroTik. And I was trained by Ron. I'm a distributor as well. We're a handful in France. I'm a single brand distributor. I only focus on MikroTik because I believe in MikroTik and I like what they do. I'm also a trainer. I was up till a month ago the only trainer in France. The French are rather snobbish. When we first tried to present MikroTik, they very condescendingly said, well, 30 euros for this, must be some Asian crap. But obviously once the technical people have it within their hands, then, oh wow, why do we still buy that very expensive brand when we could do the same thing with this? So the structure of my presentation, we'll start with a small introduction, talk about strategy, the requirements, and last part will be the lessons learned when preparing devices in volumes. I don't think there are many data centers left around the world where you can't find any MikroTik equipment in it. It's become quite pervasive. What's happening in France now is that we're starting to think, oh, well, we can go beyond the data centers and use them as our CPEs. So some companies for a while have knocked on my door and said, well, could you prepare some devices for us so we don't have to do it? And the volume wasn't very interesting to leap into that fray. But last year, a company called Paritel said, we need about 1,500 units prepared. Are you capable of doing that? At the time, sorry, I'm going a bit too fast, sorry. As you all know, or you don't maybe all know, MikroTik means small network. We're very we've gone beyond the humble beginnings of MikroTik, and now, as I said just now, MikroTik is everywhere. If we want to be able to continue competing against the big name brands, we also have to be able to adapt to our customer needs. And the ability to pre-install, or pre-stage as some call it, is part of that need. Adapting the configurations to an ISP's needs can go through several steps. We're going to talk about them in a minute. But basically, I mean, when you think about pre-installation, all you think about is, oh, I'll take a script, inject it into the device, and then deliver it to the customer. Sometimes it's going to be a bit more, not complex, but complete than one step. You're going to have to provide the equipment in a certain version of RouterOS. So you might have to downgrade or upgrade, depends. In most cases, in the two customers I've worked with preparing volume installations, they also wanted labels. The first one wanted a barcode on the box so that when they took it off the shelf, the technician would simply flash it. He would have the device's Ether1 MAC address, and then within their inventory, they knew exactly where this device was located in their infrastructure. The second customer simply wanted a serial number on the device itself. And we'll see when we talk about labels. So it was a bit different because to obtain the serial number is a bit more complicated from a central point of view. The upside to volume preparations is that you're going to add some value. You're going to charge the customer a bit more for that, so more money. We all know today that outsourcing is a way of alleviating our tasks, making our life easier. But in doing so, you're going to get less revenue because you're sharing that revenue. The other downside is that you're contributing to someone else's growth, not yours. And I always find that a bit fishy when people say, we're going to help you. Yes, actually, I'm helping you. The other thing is you complexify the whole process because you're not actually behind what's going on. You're trusting someone else to do that task, which means that in terms of quality control, you're not in full control. And I find that a bit disturbing because if something goes wrong, it's not the outsourced company that's going to be blamed, it's you. So your brand, your name, your company. In doing volume preparations, for me, the objectives were twofold. I want to prepare as many as possible in the smallest amount of time because I'm a one-man band. By that, I mean I don't have interns, I don't have employees, I don't have... Well, I've got my wife who prepares orders at night when I'm like over here or on trainings, and I have my father-in-law who's 81 who will bring the parcels to the post office, which is just luckily across the street. It's not always easy to be everywhere at the same time. The approach I propose, or the approach I use, is more sort of garage style workshop. It's not industrial size, which would probably entail different tools. From a MikroTik point of view, small network, it's what's feasible would be 50 units. If you take a CRS 354, you can do 50 units at one time. You might think, hey, but if I put two CRSs 354, I could do 100. Yay! The problem is, if something goes wrong, you potentially have that many devices to recover, to fix. 50 units, one by one, whatever you have to do, could actually be quite time-consuming. And again, I stress, the idea is the most units in the least amount of time. Oops, sorry. Again, when we say the least amount of time, and Benjamin Franklin, I think in 1748, coined the phrase, time is money, which is true. I mean, while you're doing that, you're not doing something else. You're not going on trainings. You're not presenting. So the idea when I was preparing this workshop, I call it a workshop, is to keep it simple, to follow a procedure. You want to prepare as many in the least amount of time. You don't want to think about it. You just want to be a chain worker. You've done 50, put them back in the box, come out 50, start again. And then I think the most I did in one go was 800, which is quite time consuming. I'm lucky because I work from home, so my time schedule isn't hampered by 9 to 5 considerations. So if you've got a procedure, ideally you don't want to deviate from it, unless, of course, you come across an unforeseen circumstance, issue, Then you adapt, and you update your procedure. So what do we need? You need as I mentioned just now, a CRS 354. You need a workbench on which you can lay out 50 units. You could do it on the floor, I guess. And you need cables. You need to plug the devices to the switch. You'll need a computer. Any laptop will do. You'll need a means to print the labels. Just when you're talking about 354, you've actually got 48 Ethernet ports. So you'll need 2 RJ to optical modules. This is my first setup. This is our dining room table. So you've got hexes all linked up to the CRS 354. We can't see very clearly. We'll see it on another picture, but my cable layout has a certain level of permanence. I reuse it. Obviously, I can't use my kitchen, my dining room table all year round, so I have to fold it away. But the cabling remains intact. I can replug it in, and I don't waste time on that. In terms of software, obviously you're going to use FlashFig. Has anyone used FlashFig for volume installations already? Okay. Well, that's the one that does the magic. You'll need a net install as well, because nothing ever goes right 100%. There's always little mishaps and unforeseen situations where net install will help you fix those. You'll need access to the devices, to your router, so Winbox and an SSH access are really necessary. And you'll need a Linux environment, because what I suggest in my approach is to use Ansible, which runs on Linux. So I use VMware on my computer and Ubuntu, and that works fine. And obviously, as I said just now, you'll need a software, some kind of software to print the labels. We'll talk about that when we get to the labels. I won't go into depth about my flow, task flow. It's a suggestion. That's the one I follow. As I said, I follow a procedure. I'm meticulous, maybe, excessively perfectionist. So I like things to be structured, and I like to know where I am at any given time. When I talked about the cabling all being linked together, I also have a map of how the routers are spread out, which means if I have an error message on the switch saying port 35 had a problem, I know exactly where port 35 is. Even my cabling has got little labels. You want to prepare your switch? I would say you only need to prepare it once, because after you'll back it up, and then every time you need to bring it out of the cupboard and start again, you just restore that configuration. So we have a few examples of how to compose your bridge. And obviously in all this process, you're controlling power. Very funny. Because you're switching on and switching off the devices for the FlashFig, for the Ansible, and for the final control. So we're going to switch them off, we're going to switch them on, and we're going to restart them. You'll also be able to use the neighbors list and the host lists in RouterOS, which are good indicators to allow you to determine if everything's on par. Again, if you did 500 at a time, that would be a lot longer to control every time you went from step to step. When you got 50, it's pretty quick. So FlashFig. FlashFig exists at least since version 4.7, so it's going back quite a while. It used to be part of net install, and starting from 647, they brought it out and made it an independent tool. And until last May, you could only replace the running config. not the default config, which is a problem because when my client, Paritel, said, well, can you do 1500? I'm like, ooh, I'm going to have to find a lot of engines, a lot of Chinese. It's not going to be easy. Sorry, that might be a politically incorrect joke, sorry. I'm half Chinese, actually. Quarter Chinese. So I talked to Yanis Yakowski. I talked to Walters, my account manager, and I said, look, I can't answer that tender because I can't replace the default config. Do you find that normal? And as luck would have it, 2 weeks later, Druvis came out with a video. You're aware of MikroTik's YouTube channel. And his first video, I think there was about a week apart between the two, was how to use FlashFig to replace the default configs. Yay, I can do it. So I called up my customer and said, hey, are you still in the process? Because I'd like to answer that tender. And that was a Friday or Thursday. And Friday they said, well, okay, but you have to be quick with your offer. And on Monday they said, you got it. It's a bit more complicated than that, but more or less. A week later, Druvis came out with another video saying to do the same thing with FlashFig, but from Unix platforms. So how does FlashFig work? Well, you launch it. You configure the IP as you do with the bootp in net install. You configure the IP you're going to send to the device that you want to flash. You select the script that you want to inject to the device. And if all is well, your device is flashed in 3 seconds. It's very important because that means that we don't have to worry about the random admin password that's on the devices, because RouterOS isn't actually in memory yet. FlashFig really starts right at the beginning of the whole boot process. It's a Windows executable, which doesn't mean that you need Windows, but it does help. You can use it on other platforms with emulators. And you can only flash devices that are in the same segment. Doesn't mean they have to be physically attached, but they have to be in the same level 2 network segment. So, as I said just now, indicate the IP you want to inject to your device. Obviously, your PC has to be in that same network segment. Browse to select the script that you want to inject. Select that script and click on Select. And then click on Activate right at the top. As we can see in this slide, it says Disable because it's already been clicked on. And once you've done that, then you'll get the green LED on top left, saying that you're active. So you could say, well, I'll just plug everything in and off we go, merrily. If you do, you could run into a few surprises, as I had. So what I suggest is you start with one device. If it's flashed, you'll see it straight away. So check FlashFig. Okay, it works. Maybe try it a second time, just in case. And then once you're ready, open the floodgates. There are a few recommendations on MikroTik's help site. Don't leave other interfaces active on your PC, or you might get the no TFTP request. Disable STP mode, hardware offload, things like that. It's a sensitive thing, so once you've got the right idea of how it works and how it behaves, it's quite easy to sort out. To be able to flash a device, the device has to be in a boot mode. We could call it the net install mode, we call it the FlashFig mode, doesn't matter. It's in a flash boot mode. devices that are delivered to you from MikroTik are already in that mode. So you take them out of the box, you plug them in. The first thing he's going to do is he's going to find, look, search for a FlashFig server operator. If there aren't any, then he'll boot up and he'll deactivate that mode. So you only get one chance. Don't miss it. It's interesting that when you inject your custom config, MikroTik doesn't, or RouterOS doesn't actually remove the default configuration put in place by MikroTik. He puts it at the end of it. If you look, when you do a system default config print, right at the bottom of the list, there's a custom script section, which is empty by default. So when you inject your custom default script, that's where he places it. So you think, oh, maybe I can switch from one to the other. Not that I know of, or that MikroTik has allowed me to be aware of. In this script, that's my first script, because as you know, the devices now are all mostly coming out with the admin random password. So to put my devices in a situation where I can actually do my job, which is change the RouterOS version and then FlashFig with the customer's configuration, I need to have this device there. So I have two lines. The first one is to activate the DHCP client on Ether1 and to set a password for admin. I could have left the password out, but it's not recommended, is it? Admin. Okay, Ansible. So once all my devices have been flashed, they've all got an IP address because the DHCP has been activated on Ether1. So they're available. How does Ansible work? Well, Ansible is an open source platform. It was acquired by Red Hat in 2015. But this platform is impressive. I mean, I don't pretend to master or even be fluent in Ansible. I probably use 2%. But those 2% allow me to do what I have to do. Obviously, we would all want to master all the tools we use, but I mean, life is short, isn't it? We can't be masters of everything. But you can do software provisioning, configuration management, application deployment, whether it be on Linux-aware machines or Windows machines. It's all possible. And the beauty of all that is that you don't need an agent on the devices, which is, for me, kind of new in the approach. I've always, in my years, seen you had a server and you had a client. In this case, you don't. All you need is an IP access to be able to run SSH for Unix platforms, or has a Windows remote management, allowing you to execute your PowerShell commands. Ooh, that's going very fast. So you might say, well, okay, well, Ansible, fine, but what do I do with it? And luckily, a guy called Zach Biles, who I thank very much, actually wrote a playbook to upgrade and downgrade RouterOS. It's a open source. It's available, freely available. I've put all the details there. So let's talk a bit about the actual playbook. There are certain elements that are part of the structure. So we have the hosts, who are going to be, what is going to be targeted by your playbook. So I've specified, well, everything in the 89 subnet from 200 to 250. I'm also going to tell him that I'm using RouterOS, the platform, the environment. I'm going to tell him what the password is for my devices. As you saw just now, I injected the password admin for the user admin. This is where I'm going to, what I'm going to use to get to them with SSH. I'm going to ignore deprecation warnings, and I'm not going to gather facts. The host is also called the inventory. We have the Ansible configuration. This is very important. When you'll run this, when you run Ansible, your devices won't necessarily all be responsive. So what do? Do you restart it? Do you slow it down? You've got a retry option. And that saved me a lot of time because he would just, sometimes the device wasn't totally ready, and then with the retry, bang, he would finally get through. The pipelining as well makes it more optimal. We don't wait for each task to be finished before going on to the next one. We just keep going. And the SSH host checking, obviously, you understand that we don't want to have too many obstacles in our way. We have a collections folder in which we can inject what I would qualify as a library, which allows us to reuse existing content rather than reinvent the wheel. We have our defaults directory in which we're going to set place the settings for our playbook. We'll see this in a second, but I'm going to specify my port, the version I want to inject, the method I want to use to do that injection. We have our tasks, the actual methods that are going to be executed, and we have a package directory. Why? Well, because the way the playbook's written, you could actually download what you need, or you could just collect it from a local directory, which was my preferred method. Here we have the main, the YAML file in the defaults. So as I was saying just now, I'm telling him what environment I'm working with, what my port is, what version I want to distribute, what method. I'm going to use the push method, the task. We'll see this in a second. Obviously, we're version 7, so I'm limited to stable. And then we have the timeouts. Just now, I stressed the issue about time is money. So on the right-hand side, you see the default values in this playbook. So you'd wait a little over 2 minutes for a reboot. Multiply that by 50, and that's a lot of time. Same thing for the transfer. Transferring the NPKs over to the device was 120 seconds as well. So I reduced those, and that made my task go, ooh, I'm going to lose sound. The tasks. So we have the main task, which is sort of the base of the actions we're going to undertake. As I said just now, I use push. The difference between push and download is simple. One uses the device's access to the internet, and the other one uses the PCs running Ansible's internet access. We have the firmware to update the root, and finally the validate to check that the job tasks have been done correctly. Small excerpt in the push. I'm sending 3 files. The router OS, the Wi-Fi Wave 2, and the TRS 069, which is what the client needs. In this playbook, there was an issue because when the device would, when the device would reboot, the SSH connection would get lost, and then the task would fail. So there's probably many ways or other ways of getting around this, but in my case, it was simple. I just simply ignored the error. Same thing in the firmware upgrade. I added the setting of the flash boot mode. But if you forget, you can also execute it manually, individually. In the main task, I could actually put actions and then run them individually with a -T, which is quite useful. Quick word about labels. As you see up on the right, one customer wanted the serial number and an indication of the ports which are available to the user. Bottom right-hand side, you have barcodes. That was another customer. These are the scripts I used to generate the data I needed to create those labels with. The labels, you can print them with a thermal printer, apply them with a label applicator. You could print them with Word. Big problem with Word is he sorts the merge from left to right and then top to bottom, which is sometimes not intuitive when you're actually going down your boxes. Tech IT has a tool called Barcode Studio, which allows us to print barcodes or QR codes and to decide in what order we want this to be done. Lessons learned. Nothing ever goes right in IT, otherwise we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have all jobs. I mean, if it was, you know. So you have to plan for that. You don't want a breakdown of something in that chain to prevent you from shipping the things out. The customer's waiting, so time is of the essence. Have a second PC prepared. That one breaks down or is not available, you can use the other one. Have another switch with the backup. Have a plan B for printing out your labels. If the labels are the ones that's preventing you from shipping out your devices, costing money. I talked about mapping out already. Oh, big problem. When I first started, I plugged all my devices in, very enthusiastic, switched it on, and they all booted up before the switch. So the layer 2 segment wasn't available. So they missed out on the FlashFig. The FlashFig couldn't intervene, which meant I had to reset them all, 50 of them. But you put them in net install mode, which is not that complicated, and it's just manual labor. So, rule of thumb, always start a session with your PoE on all ports disabled. That way, no surprises. I said it in the beginning, always test before you launch, open the floodgates. Sometimes you'll have to take care of a device on its own. Careful, some customers, one of my customers had his default script would actually configure the device based on the links that it could reach. So you might not want to do a reboot at the very last. Here you can see how I've strung my cables together. I actually bought rulers with cable clips, nothing fancy, but cool, because every time I take it out of the bag, it's there. Just a bit of artwork. Have AX2s on the left and nighttime hexes. As I said, I work from home, so time wasn't a problem. And just to finish off, maybe I have to do it from here. A little symphony of FlashFig Symphony. If I can get it to work. It's not working. Okay, sorry about the sound. Any questions? Cool, thank you very much.